bienvenue dans cette table ronde. Alors nous sommes réunis aujourd'hui pour 1h30 de discussion autour du lien, de la relation, de l'échange entre l'éditeur de photographie et l'auteur photographe. Comment travaillent-ils ensemble? Comment font-ils équipe pour concevoir un livre? Quel processus de travail pour aboutir à l'ouvrage final que nous avons dans les mains? Nous allons voir que c'est un dialogue permanent, pas toujours très simple, mais toujours riche et fécond, et qui demande à l'un et l'autre de se faire confiance, d'apprendre à se connaître et de travailler main dans la main. Pour en parler, nous avons la joie et l'honneur d'accueillir 4 éditeurs que je vais présenter dans un instant.
Welcome to this conversation. So we're going to have a discussion for an hour and a half, and we will be discussing the relation between publishers and authors, photographers. So we'll look at the aspects of their work as a team, and the whole process that leads to the production of the photography book. So it's a dialogue. It's not always simple. It can be a very rich and very productive conversation. It's all about creating a relation of trust and getting to know each other. So to discuss this, we have 4 publishers and photographers with us today.
Voilà, 4 éditeurs avec nous. David Fourré d'abord. Vous avez créé la maison d'édition La Main Donne en 2011. Vous êtes basé à Marcillac-Vallon en Aveyron. Et nous allons en parler parce que vous invitez souvent vos auteurs à venir vous voir dans ce paysage singulier. Cet été, vous n'êtes pas en reste puisque vous présentez en ce mois de juillet 3 nouveaux livres, si je ne me trompe pas. Mucho Amor de Bernard Plossu qui revient sur ses plus belles années en Andalousie, où il a vécu avec sa famille pendant quelques années. Wild Rose de Gabriel Duplantier qui nous propose une plongée dans l'espace intime d'une maison familiale. Et enfin, Soledad de Gilles Roudière, qui là aussi explore d'ailleurs les paysages de l'Andalousie, donc vraiment beaucoup d'Andalousie. Bienvenue David.
So David Fourré is here with us. He's based in Marcillac-Vallon in the Aveyron region, and he created a publishing house called La Main Donne in 2011. He's based in this place, in a quite remote place where he likes to invite the people he works with, and this is something we'll discuss. This summer he's putting out 3 books, one called Mucho Amor, which is about Andalusia, a book called Wild Rose by Gabriel Duplantier, where the photographer looks at the intimacy, the privacy of a family home. Soledades by Gilles Roudière, which is also a book about Andalusia.
Marc Pearson, vous êtes à la tête de Zen Photo Gallery à Tokyo, au Japon. Vous êtes spécialisé dans la photographie asiatique. Vous avez créé ce lieu dédié à la photographie en septembre 2009 et vous présentez le travail de nombreux photographes avec qui vous réalisez parfois des éditions limitées. Vous présentez en ce moment l'exposition Développent Again de l'artiste japonais Doki Doki Club qui travaille sur la question du désir, de la sensualité en faisant des dessins humoristiques sur des pages de magazines érotiques. Le livre que vous avez fait avec lui a été rapidement épuisé. Nous évoquerons ensemble l'idée de ces éditions limitées et comment vous l'envisagez avec les artistes dont vous présentez le travail. On voit ici notamment les photographies tirées du livre Tiananmen de Can Tai-Wong sur les manifestations Place Tiananmen, livre qui a été sélectionné au Arles Book Awards 2024.
Mark Persson, you run a photo gallery called the Zen Gallery in Tokyo, where you present the work of Asian artists. The gallery was founded in 2009. Have an exhibition called Développent Again by artist Doki Doki Club, which is an exhibition that explores sensuality and desire through work with porn magazine, images from porn magazines with cartoons inserted within them. And this was a limited edition book that's already sold out and gone out of print. So we'll discuss this question of limited editions. This image is from a book called Tiananmen by artist Can Tai-Wong, which won the Arles Book Awards 2024. And this is a book of photos about the protests in Tiananmen Square.
Nous accueillons aussi Anastasia Leonova. Vous êtes l'une des fondatrices de East Publishing, une maison d'édition ukrainienne. Vous l'avez créée en 2017. Sur votre site internet, nous pouvons lire une date qui a tout changé pour vous, celle du 24 février 2022, l'invasion de l'armée russe en Ukraine et cette situation tragique qui perdure depuis. Nous allons l'évoquer ensemble, ce que veut dire soutenir vos artistes en temps de guerre et comment vous continuez malgré tout à poursuivre vos activités. Cette année, vous avez notamment publié le livre Saints du photographe Sacha Maslov qui documente les visages des forces armées ukrainiennes. Plus de 100 photographies de volontaires qui défendent le pays. Une partie des recettes du livre servent d'ailleurs à financer des équipements médicaux pour l'armée ukrainienne. On va en parler.
Anastasia Leonova, you're the founder of Ist Publishing in Ukraine, which was founded in 2017. This very important date features on your website the 24th of February 2022, which is the date of the invasion of Ukraine by the Russian army. And this was a date that changed everything, of course, in your country and created this tragic situation. You will be telling us about your work to support the artists you work with and to continue your activity in this context. This year, you've got a book by Sasha Maslov called Saints, which came out this year, and it shows portraits of the faces of volunteers from the armed forces in Ukraine, and the benefits from the sales of the book are donated to provide healthcare for Ukrainian people.
À côté de vous, Francesca Todé, vous êtes photographe et éditrice. Vous avez monté votre maison d'édition Départ pour l'image en 2018 aux côtés de l'artiste Luca Refo. Excusez-moi, vous êtes basé à Milan en Italie. Vos derniers ouvrages en date sont celui de Francesco Merlini, intitulé Better in the Dark Than His Rider, sorte de voyage hypnotique, onirique à travers différents endroits du monde. Et puis vous sortez ce mois de juillet votre propre livre. Il s'appelle Yuzza, surnom que l'on donnait affectueusement à la comédienne et écrivaine sicilienne Goliarda Sapienza. Vous partez sur ses traces et vous nous permettez de suivre avec beaucoup d'intimité le parcours singulier de cet artiste. Nous parlerons aussi du fait que vous avez un peu la double casquette, puisque vous êtes à la fois photographe et éditrice. Comment faire son propre livre quand on est à la fois donc l'artiste et l'éditeur? Nous allons l'évoquer ensemble.
And Francesca Todde, you are both a photographer and a publisher. So you founded Départ pour l'image, a publishing house in 2018, along with Luca Refo, published a book by Francesco Merlini called Better in the Dark Than His Rider, which is a kind of hypnotic trip around the world with visions of different places around the world. And you published your own book, which is called Yuzza, which was the nickname of writer Goliarda Sapienza, who's a Sicilian writer. So your book documents her story and her life. You will be telling us about your kind of double role, both as a photographer and a publisher, and tell us maybe a bit about what it feels like to publish your own book.
Alors faire un livre de photographie, c'est d'abord travailler côte à côte, main dans la main, artiste et éditeur. Échanger bien sûr sur l'editing, la maquette, la couverture. Bref, il y a la nécessité de créer un climat propice pour l'échange dès le début de cette aventure, je crois. David Fourré, j'ai envie de commencer avec vous parce que vous avez une méthode bien à vous. Vous faites souvent vous invitez l'artiste à venir vous voir là où vous êtes en Aveyron. Comment ça se passe cette aventure? Est-ce que vous pouvez nous raconter?
So first of all, we're going to talk about the making of a photography book and how it's all about working hand in hand, side by side, between the photographer and the publisher throughout the entire process, from the editing of the book to the design and the artwork on the cover. It's all about these conversations you have together. So we will start with David Fourré. You've got quite an unusual way of working with photographers where you invite them to stay with you in the place where you're based. So can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Bonjour. Alors, c'est pas une règle. Hein. Il se trouve que ma maison d'édition, elle est en Aveyron, que l'Aveyron, c'est pas la porte à côté pour plein de photographes, et que je suis persuadé que pour faire un bouquin, on a besoin de se rencontrer, on a besoin de passer du temps ensemble. Donc voilà, la solution que j'ai trouvée, mais qui s'est fait assez naturellement, qui n'a pas été une décision, ça a été de pouvoir demander aux photographes de passer à la maison. Ça peut arriver aussi que moi, j'aille chez le photographe d'ailleurs. Et je me suis rendu compte petit à petit que le fait de passer parfois 3 jours, 4 jours, de faire comme ça 2 ou 3 séances de travail, en vivant dans la même maison aussi, dans une maison familiale. Moi, je travaille dans ma maison. Et ben, ça crée autre chose. Il y a autre chose qui se passe. C'est-à-dire on bosse beaucoup, on travaille, on fait des grosses journées de travail, mais on fait pas que ça. On fait pas que ça, on mange ensemble, on boit des coups ensemble, on peut aller se promener ensemble, on vit avec la famille. Et il y a autre chose qui se passe à ce moment-là. Il y a peut-être, alors c'est pas toujours des amitiés qui se créent avec les photographes, mais en tout cas, il y a une sorte d'intimité, il y a une sorte de connaissance qui est, à mon avis, vraiment importante. Parce que pour peut-être comprendre au-delà même du travail du corpus d'images sur lequel on travaille, pour comprendre un peu ce qu'est le photographe.
So inviting the artists over is not a rule, but it is something that I like to do. I'm based in the Aveyron region, so that's kind of in the middle south of France, kind of near Toulouse, and so for most photographers it's quite far away from where they live. So I think it's very important when working together to get to spend some time together and to really meet each other. So I found that inviting them to visit was kind of a natural solution. It wasn't like a deliberate decision, but it kind of came about naturally. So I do invite photographers to come and spend time at my home, or sometimes I might go and visit them as well, but I like to spend a few days together, have maybe 2 or 3 sessions of work together, and they get to come and stay at my house with my family, and this is how we can develop a relationship that's quite different. And it also means that we get to spend, like, to have proper big days of work together. But it's not only that, we eat together, we have drinks, we go for walks, and they share the life of my family, and this is how something special can happen between us. It's not necessarily a relation of friendship, but at least it's about getting to know each other. And I think it's very important to understand a photographer that I work with beyond just the physical images that they provide, but to get to know them as a person.
C'est quelque chose de très singulier d'inviter quelqu'un comme ça dans ce cadre-là, et que ça permettait en tout cas de créer une atmosphère, une complicité qu'il n'y aurait peut-être pas.
So that's a way of creating an atmosphere, a complicity that wouldn't exist otherwise.
Bah oui, la complicité, il peut s'en créer, bien évidemment. Encore une fois, au-delà des images sur lesquelles on va travailler, un corpus d'images qui va devenir un livre, on pourrait faire quelque chose de très froid en travaillant seul. Et au-delà des images, même qu'on ressent des choses en regardant des images, des fois on ne sait pas exactement pourquoi. Le fait de rencontrer un photographe, de le connaître un peu mieux, de voir comment il vit, de voir comment on peut partager les choses, je suis assez persuadé que ça peut nous permettre, en tout cas dans les livres que je fais, qui sont des livres pas documentaires, ce ne sont pas des catalogues, ce sont des livres qui travaillent sur l'intime. Je pense que ça permet de comprendre un peu mieux quand même qu'est-ce qu'il y a derrière toutes ces photos. Et le fait de travailler ensemble, de discuter ensemble, on fait un chemin avec le photographe tous les deux, parce que le photographe, parfois il ne sait pas exactement ce qu'il fait non plus. Et on apprend tous les deux comme ça à faire le livre ensemble, en se connaissant mieux. Et pour moi, le fait de se connaître et de voir qui y a derrière ces photos, ça permet de mieux comprendre les images et peut-être de mieux le retransmettre dans le livre.
Yeah, it's this idea that there is something beyond the body of images that will form the book. It's about going beyond a kind of cold approach and trying to understand what happens, what makes you feel things when you see these images. In my books are not documentary books, they're not catalogues, they're about intimacy, most of them. So it's important for me to understand what lies behind the actual images. And by spending time together, we get to develop this shared understanding, which also helps me to better build the book and show the work of the artist.
Et alors on voit derrière vous des photographies que vous m'avez envoyées de justement un peu ces sessions de travail. Je ne sais pas si vous voulez un peu les commenter, mais c'est peut-être pas évident de les voir pour vous, David.
Ouais.
These pictures show examples of what happens during a work session. Perhaps you'd like to comment on that.
Voilà, oui, ça montre. Bon, elle s'appelle Moulinette.
The cat is called Moulinette.
Des fois, elle peut faire de l'editing parce qu'on peut poser toutes les photos sur la table et le lendemain, quand on vient, qu'on n'avait pas mis le chat dehors, il y a un nouvel editing.
She does a form of editing where we set up all the pictures on the table and we leave them there. And when we come back in the morning, some might be missing. So the cat is contributing to the selection.
En tout cas, on voit un processus de création très important, un processus où vous mettez toutes les images.
Oui, mais je pense qu'après tous les éditeurs travaillent de façon proche avec le photographe, c'est obligatoire. Après, c'est vrai que le fait d'être en Aveyron, d'être à la campagne, c'est pas comme un rendez-vous, comme dans un bureau parisien avec des horaires. On fait une séance de travail, puis chacun repart chez soi. Là, il y a 3-4 jours, puisque l'idée, c'est quand même de passer du temps ensemble. En 3-4 jours, on a le temps de faire beaucoup de choses. Faire en plus que 3-4 jours, pour moi, ça devient un peu compliqué, parce qu'au bout d'un moment, on n'a plus de jus. Il faut reposer les yeux, il faut revenir. Donc souvent, il y a 2 ou 3 séjours. Et voilà, et le fait de rester du coup quelques jours ensemble, pour moi, c'est quelque chose qui est vraiment... Ça nous permet de ne pas parler que de photos, parce qu'on peut très vite vite aussi, être fatigué de parler que de photos. Mais voilà, et ça nous permet de faire du tac au tac, des questions-réponses, de se poser des questions, de construire, de déconstruire assez facilement. Il y a quelque chose c'est assez dense, hein, ces journées. Hein, mais voilà, pour moi, c'est une façon... Et puis pour moi, au-delà même du livre photo, ce qui est important, c'est, je dis un peu toujours ça, mais c'est tout ce qu'il y a autour. C'est-à-dire les rencontres. Voilà, faire un livre avec un photographe que j'aurais pas rencontré, ça me paraîtrait... Il y aurait quelque chose d'un peu avorté, pour moi en tout cas.
Yes, so because I live in the countryside in the middle of nowhere, the process is very different from what would happen if a photographer visited me in an office in Paris and they would come in and we would do some work and everyone would leave afterwards. In this case, we spend 3 and 4 days together and there's a lot you can do in a few days, like spent together. We try not to go beyond 3 or 4 days because after a while you get tired and your eyes get tired and sometimes we need to have several sessions of a couple of days together. But what's important is that during those days we talk about much more than just photography, and we share questions and answers, and we have these conversations, and we construct things and deconstruct things, and so they're very busy days. But again, I think it's very important to get to meet the person, and I think if I wouldn't make a book with someone without meeting them and getting to spend time with them. If I did that, it would feel like the book is incomplete.
Et puis parfois, vous allez aussi chez les photographes. Là, en l'occurrence, par exemple, chez Bernard Plossu, ça peut vous arriver de vous déplacer aussi, évidemment, pour créer ces conditions de complicité.
Oui, bien sûr.
And so you also travel to visit the photographers. This is a picture of you visiting Bernard Plossu.
L'idée, c'est de passer quelques temps ensemble et de se connaître, d'apprendre à se connaître.
Yeah, it can go both ways. The important thing is to get to spend time together and get to know each other.
Francesca Todé, comment se passe le début du processus de création d'un livre avec l'artiste dont vous avez publié le travail? Je pense par exemple un peu au dernier en date que vous avez fait avec Francesco Merlini.
Oui. So how does can you tell us about the beginning of the process when you start working with an artist? For example, the book you did with Francesco Merlini.
En fait, je suis très très d'accord avec ce qu'il vient de dire David. C'est que pour nous aussi, quand on fait un livre, il faut vraiment qu'on connaisse bien la personne. Enfin, c'est une relation qui s'est tissue dans le temps. Et là, par exemple, avec Francesco, on connaissait déjà son travail depuis longtemps et on a eu la chance qu'en habitant tous les deux à Milan, il a pu venir à la maison 3 mois. Enfin, il n'a pas habité avec nous, mais la journée, il était avec nous. On pouvait travailler ensemble à l'editing, à la séquence et tout. Et du coup, c'était vraiment très chouette de faire ce travail avec lui. Et c'était aussi... Enfin, pas toutes les fois, on était... Nous, on a une manière un peu particulière de travailler, c'est... Peut-être que tous les publishers ils le font, mais en fait on regarde les projets et après on répare un peu de zéro. Enfin, genre les livres, il n'a pas forcément complètement à faire avec les projets initiaux. Et c'est quelque chose qu'il faut bien parler avec l'auteur pour qu'il accepte aussi, parce que souvent, moi aussi, quand je travaille sur mon projet et après on le déconstruit pour faire le livre, c'est quelque chose de difficile. Et du coup, et après, on commence à parler ensemble de comment reconstruire une narrative.
Yeah, I fully agree with what David said. I think to make a book, you need to really get to know each other. And for us, it's very important to build this relationship over time with the artists we work with. Francesco is an artist we've known for a long time. He's also, he's living in Milan, where we're based. So when working on the book, we spent 3 months together working on the whole book, on the editing, on the sequencing and every aspect of the process. And that's been really great. Great thing to do. I think the way we work is quite unusual in that we usually, when an artist comes to us with a project for a book, we start over from scratch and we just really take the project and pick it apart and break it down and start again from scratch. So the book is usually very different from the initial project, which means that we need to spend the time to talk with the artist and to explain that to them and for them to accept the process. I mean, as a photographer, I sometimes it could be difficult for me to come up with a project and have it completely dismantled and deconstructed. So part of the work is about rebuilding something together.
Oui, avec Francesco, c'était étrange parce qu'on était amis en plus. Et du coup, on pouvait vraiment batailler sur les images. Et on se disait quelquefois, OK, je te donne cette image si tu me donnes cette autre image. Enfin, c'était vraiment...
Comme un jeu ou en tout cas un duel, enfin quelque
Voilà.
chose d'assez...
And yeah, so with Francesco, because we were friends, we had these conflicts together, and where he would go, okay, you can have this picture, but you have to give me this picture, and we had all these negotiations and jousting between us, jousting.
On va parler après justement un peu des potentiels désaccords qui peuvent arriver. Marc Pearson, je voulais vous demander si vous aussi vous trouvez que c'est essentiel de travailler main dans la main, de tout faire pour que l'artiste en fait se sente en adéquation avec l'éditeur. Et puis comment vous faites vous pour faire en sorte qu'il y ait justement cette adéquation?
So we'll talk later about potential disagreements between artists and publishers, but a question for Mark Persson. Do you think it's essential to work hand in hand with the artists you work with so that they can embrace your vision? And if so, how do you achieve that?
Yes. But it's not necessarily our vision. I think it's a combination of the vision of the artist and the publisher. And I think it works best when there is a mutual understanding and mutual trust and compromise. And again, we can talk about some disagreements later on. Perhaps I should contrast. I mean, it's very interesting to hear both of your approaches, which I think working extremely closely with the individual case. So in our case, I see the publishing as part of the overall kind of a ecosystem of photography. So we have the photography, we have the exhibition, we have a book, we have photography fairs, we have book fairs, we have to sell the books. And also the gallery, when I began it in 2009, it was a very, very small, unknown gallery in Tokyo. But very quickly it built up a kind of a following, especially among the photographers, because the photographers want an outlet for their works, and so it became, we sometimes call it a Zen photo family, but it's like a family, and sometimes we have new people joining the family, and sometimes some people leave the family, but over the course of time, it's quite a long consistency of the relationship of numerous photographers. So I think obviously this family is a voluntary family, so you can choose to join the family or choose to leave the family. But I think that relationship can only continue if you have a mutual trust and a mutual confidence and mutual respect. And I think that's something that we continually try to maintain.
Et un désir aussi des deux côtés, j'imagine, le désir de l'artiste de continuer, désir de l'éditeur de continuer avec l'artiste.
And of course, there also has to be desire from both sides, like for the artist to work with the publisher and for the vice versa.
Yes, there certainly is desire, but of course those desires are different desires. I think, as an artist, the artist wants to make the best possible book they can make from their work, and for them, that work is the only thing that matters. And on the other hand, for the publisher, we have more constraints in terms of the cost, ability to sell it, ability to carry it all over the world to the book fairs, and to carry it in our suitcases on international flights. And also for us, it's this is another book. After 200 books, it's number 201, and so for us, it's not the end of the world. This particular book, I have to say it. Of course, we want it to be successful because we want it to sell for the artist. We want to produce it for the artist, and we want the artist to be happy with that. But also, we also need to be happy as well.
Et vous faites notamment beaucoup d'éditions limitées. Ça permet justement de faire ces ventes et d'être aussi dans un objet qui suscite du désir.
You also produce limited editions, which means that you create objects that are desirable.
Yeah, we do limited. We don't do a lot of limited editions. We do some limited editions, but so the limited editions, I would say, of course, one point of view of the limited edition is to provide something more interesting, more rare, more desirable for the person who loves those photographs or those works. There's also an economic side because, frankly, book publishing loses money, and it's another way to address a little bit extra revenue to help to pay for the publication of the books.
Anastasia Leonova, comment vous choisissez les artistes avec qui vous travaillez et faut-il qu'il y ait nécessairement une bonne entente dès le départ qui est tout de suite comme une complicité avec l'artiste?
Anastasia Leonova, how do you choose the artists you work with, and do you think it's important to have a good relationship, a good connection with the artist?
Yes, totally. I agree with my colleagues that work with artists side by side and know them as a person is crucial also for us. And we in publishing, we do a part of photo books. We do a lot of theory because photo book market in Ukraine is not that big. So one day we decided that we want to also to publish some theory and philosophy on photography to help people understand what is photography, how to deal with photo books, how to look at art and photography. And when working on the textbooks, you feel very distant from the author, and the part we do in art books and photo books feels more completely different, and that's actually one of my favorite parts in publishing, working with the artist. And basically, we usually work with Ukrainian photographers or Eastern European photographers. I know for a long time, so for me it's also important to follow the artist for several years. And then at some point to help them to publish a book and to give a stage to tell their story. And it just bookmaking is a really long process because even after the publishing, you have this really long time to present it, and it's very important for both sides. You want to make sure you're with the right person on the boat for this journey. We also try to work offline as much as possible. I mean, now it's a bit complicated.
Vous êtes à la tête d'une maison d'édition ukrainienne, comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, qui est évidemment plongée dans une situation tragique en ce moment avec la guerre contre la Russie qui vous a attaqué. Comment vous faites pour soutenir concrètement les artistes avec qui vous travaillez dans ces temps troublé, Anastasia?
So, as I said, your publishing house is based in Ukraine, and the country is currently affected by this tragic situation of the Russian invasion. So, how do you manage to concretely support the artists you work with?
Yes, so obviously war is not something that you prepared in life, and when your life changes completely in one day, it's just very hard to keep finding the senses in what you're doing. I mean, you go into art fair, you go to Paris photo, you just do, some photo books, and then at some point you're waking up and then you realize, what's the point? Because you just want to do something useful. And that was the first time for me. I was really regret I didn't have some medical degree. Yeah, and it just took some time also for our publishing house and for me personally to find this sense again to continue. But then I remember it was a day when maybe 3 weeks after the invasion started, and we received the order from the front line, and there was a note please don't call me because I'm on front line, please send this book there. And that's actually was so powerful that it gives me the sense to continue, for these people. And of course for our artists, a lot of people, a lot of photographers, they changed their practice. At some point, publishing house could be this rock and support for them, because when you enter the publishing house, it's a certain way you join the family. And when you see the institution is still going on, still publish books, it's some kind of gives you some certain, I don't know, this normality in your life, also to continue your not only photojournalist practice, but also your artistic practice, because you see that publisher also continue to publish this book. It was the long way for us also. We refocus our practice, and of course it's a lot of books about the war and war-oriented and relationship between war and culture. And the last book we published and we presented here just yesterday, it's called Saints. And the author, Sasha Maslov, he it's interesting because he also has this career as a portrait photography, and he worked with the commercial a lot, but then the war started, he completely changed his practice and he back to Ukraine to document the events. And The Saints is a book about people who sacrificed, who defend our country, and who become saints to somebody in certain point of time. And for us as a publishing house, it was also something new. We haven't worked with documentary photography before, but at some point you feel this urge that you have to publish it right now. And I think it's also, it's support for the artist, but also support for the country. And the other way, it's we try to work internationally as much as possible, because we think it's important to talk about it internationally, not only in Ukraine. So we try to combine these two audience and to tell through the photo books, through photography, with books and shows about Ukraine. But also we still publish in Ukraine and translate some text, which also can explain how culture can help during the war.
Oui, c'est important de partager ce travail et de le montrer à l'étranger, ce que je comprends de ce que vous dites. Et j'imagine aussi que ça passe par des événements aussi, des rencontres avec les photographes peut-être.
Do you also organize events and talks with the photographers you work with, again, to kind of spread the word?
Yes, totally. So we try to do presentations and book signings and shows. I would like we can do more exhibitions. But it depends on the project. Now it's become a bit complicated because it's hard to travel and men are not allowed to cross the border. So we actually really cancel a lot of our events in Europe because of that. So as a publisher, I also try to represent our authors when they're not here.
Marc Pearson, est-ce que c'est important aussi de soutenir moralement l'artiste, d'être à ses côtés aussi dans sa vie de tous les jours? Vous parliez de famille tout à l'heure, c'est un mot très fort. Est-ce que c'est aussi être dans un accompagnement quotidien?
Marc Pearson, do you think it's important to provide kind of moral support to your artists, or to support them in their day-to-day life? You use the word family, which is quite a strong word. So do you see it as something important to be with them on a personal level?
Yes, but of course it depends on the individual circumstances. Some people are very independent, some people are self-sufficient, but some people are not. Some people do need support or benefit from support, and as we know, I mean, photography on the whole, photography is not a way to get rich. So many of the photographers don't have much money, to be fair, and the more you concentrate on photography, the less money you have probably. So that makes it quite a difficult life choice actually for many people, and it's true in Japan and China and Hong Kong. It's the same situation, or it's definitely that is the case in Japan and China and so on. One of the aspects which I didn't mention is that I am also a collector of photography. So I began as a collector of photography and then established the gallery and then the publishing. I think one of the ways, when it gets to the bottom line, I do buy works and I pay for the publication of the books, and so some of the books would not exist if I had not basically sponsored it. Buy the prints from the photographers because they need to make money to live or survive. So, quite a few of the photographers we work with have get that kind of that is financial support in a way, but also moral support. And of course, they get opportunity to make exhibitions. And, some of the photographers come to Arles or Paris or London or New York. So we provide a kind of a platform or, this ecosystem in which it makes it a bit easier for those photographers to reach their audience or to reach the rest of the world and make contacts with new people and new publishers and new galleries and find opportunities. So some of the photography you can see this week in Arles, like Tamiko Nishimura or Hideka Tonomura or Moyi, just over there. We have a number of photographers who are represented now in Arles, and I hope we made some part of the process for them to become better appreciated around the world.
Francesca Taudet, vous qui êtes photographe en plus d'être éditrice, est-ce que cela vous aide à comprendre davantage le besoin du photographe d'être accompagné dans le processus de publication d'un livre? Parce qu'on parle justement de tout ce qui entoure aussi la publication du livre.
Francesca Taudet, as a photographer who's also a publisher, does it help you better understand the needs of the photographers you work with in terms of the support they need throughout the production of the book?
Je pense que quand on fait un livre, nous, on fait très peu de livres. On fait un livre l'année. En fait, c'est le livre dont on investit toute notre vie du moment, l'année où on le produit. Je pense qu'on le fait pour l'artiste. Par exemple, avec Yelena Yemchuk qui présentait, le livre était fait pour montrer quel était le regard spécifique de Yelena. Parce que nous, on arrivait à le voir, on aimait son travail depuis plus de 15 ans. Elle est aussi peintre. Et il n'y avait jamais eu un livre où il y avait photographie et peinture de Yelena. Et surtout, elle était aperçue comme un photographe de mode, alors que la photographie de mode, elle est un peu éloignée par rapport à l'art contemporain. Ça commence à se croiser les choses, mais c'était un peu à son service. On voulait vraiment montrer au monde comment c'était la vraie Yelena. Je pense que dans ce sens-là, oui, on donne quelques supports à l'auteur.
Yeah, we make very few books. We only make one book per year. So during that year that we spend working on a book, we invest our entire life in the work of this specific artist. For example, we made this book with artist Irena Yapchuk, and this is a book that was really aiming to show this artist's very specific vision. She's an artist we'd been following for 15 years. She's also a painter, and there had never been a book before with her photo and her painting. So we wanted to show that together. Also, she's a fashion photographer as well. So and her work in fashion, fashion photography tends to be perceived as a separate arena from the art world. So we really wanted to showcase her work as an artist and to really support her and promote her as an artist and show the world the true Irena in a way.
David Fourré, c'est important ce temps aussi d'accompagnement des artistes, c'est-à-dire que au-delà du livre, il y a vraiment ce temps consacré à l'artiste en général, à ses expositions peut-être, à toute sa vie en fait d'artiste.
What would you say, David, about the time, the notion of time, the time you spend supporting an artist, working with them beyond the book, throughout the post-publication phase of the book?
Après, la Madone, c'est une maison d'édition qui est encore jeune. Hein. Ça fait 12 ans ou 13 ans qu'on fait des livres. On doit avoir 30-35 bouquins au catalogue. Et moi, je viens plutôt du livre jeunesse à la base. Donc, j'ai pas spécialement le réseau des galeries. Voilà, j'étais pas. Moi, je publiais les livres. J'essayais de les diffuser, de les vendre, de les défendre. Mais j'avais pas tout ce réseau pour ensuite aller chercher des expositions. Puis, d'une certaine façon, c'est pas mon travail. Année après année, c'est un tout petit milieu, la photographie. On se rencontre tous. Et c'est vrai qu'il y a des choses qui peuvent arriver par connaissance. Donc, c'est vrai que faire un livre, c'est cher. Faire un livre, c'est très peu de personnes qui vont l'acheter. Hein. C'est d'où le prix du livre aussi. Et il a besoin d'être supporté, un livre. À partir du moment où on ne va pas faire payer ses auteurs et qu'on va nous-mêmes financer le livre, il faut, et si on peut, essayer de trouver des manifestations, des expositions, des événements qui fait que le livre va peut-être être plus visible et peut-être va se vendre un peu mieux. Voilà, tout simplement. Je ne suis pas sûr qu'un éditeur ait vocation à être ensuite quelqu'un qui va s'occuper. C'est pas un agent, c'est pas. Alors, le fait est qu'on se connaît beaucoup, que c'est un petit monde et qu'on arrive petit à petit à avoir des choses. Mais pour moi, c'est pas le rôle spécialement de l'éditeur.
My publishing house, La Mandone, is quite young. We started 12 years ago, so we've only put out about 30 to 35 books. But initially I came from children's publishing. So when I started off, I had no networks whatsoever in the art world. And all I did was make the books, publish them, and defend them as best as I could. But I had no networks to find exhibitions and things, and I kind of considered it wasn't really my job to do that. But over time, year after year, I got to know more people in this world, in the world of photography, and little by little I started to develop connections. And I think because we work on books that are expensive to make and whose sales are very small, it's very important to proactively take part in events, exhibitions, and so on, and so that we can make the artists as visible as possible. But having said that, I'm not sure that as a publisher, I don't think it's our role to take care of the artists as such. I think this is the job of the agents. But again, because it's a small world and we have our networks, of course, we're here to promote the books.
Alors il y a quelque chose qui arrive parfois dans la création et dans ces moments de conception du livre, c'est les désaccords. Est-ce que c'est quelque chose qui vous est déjà arrivé, David Fourré, et comment vous les réglez?
There's during the process that goes into making the book, there might be times when you disagree. There are disagreements between the artist and the publisher. So, David, how do you deal with this?
Non, moi, il n'y a jamais eu des moments de crise comme ça. Il y a des moments qui peuvent être tendus avec certains photographes, mais non, c'est vraiment une relation qui prend naissance avec de la confiance. C'est la confiance entre un photographe qui peut entendre la parole de l'éditeur, un éditeur qui peut entendre la parole du photographe, et on fait les choses à quatre mains. Non, j'ai jamais eu de crise. Il y a eu des moments pendant le confinement où on n'a pas pu se rencontrer pour faire des livres, et j'ai vu aussi ce qui pouvait manquer justement à ce moment-là, ce qui pouvait manquer de la compréhension. C'est plus facile de se comprendre quand on est l'un en face de l'autre que quand on est derrière un écran par Zoom ou des choses comme ça. Donc, mais pour moi, non, il n'y a pas eu de crise, et quand je sais que je vais faire un livre, je le ferai jusqu'au bout, et normalement, il n'y aura pas de crise. Normalement, enfin pour l'instant.
No, I've never really experienced any crises as such. There might have been moments of tensions with photographers sometimes, but basically we have this relation of trust, and it's important for the photographer to be able to hear the publisher and vice versa for the publisher to hear the photographer, and I really see it as a four hands kind of process. So and maybe during lockdown there have been times when because we weren't able to meet physically, sometimes there were some misunderstandings, because it's much easier to understand someone when you're face to face than when you're in front of Zoom, basically. But no, I've never really had any major conflicts, and I think once I decide to commit to a book and to make it happen, I just carry it through to completion.
Alors Francesca Taudet, vous nous parliez tout à l'heure alors c'est peut-être pas des crises, mais de ces moments de tension en tout cas qui existaient sans doute en faisant votre livre Yuza, étant donné que vous l'avez fait donc aux côtés de votre acolyte Lucas Réfo. Est-ce qu'il y a eu des désaccords, et puis comment vous les avez gérés?
How about you, Francesca? You mentioned some tensions that arose when making this book with.
Il faut dire qu'en fait, avec Lucas, on est compagnons aussi depuis 20 ans. Je pense que ça a joué aussi dans la construction du livre. Bon, le livre, il vient de 7 ans de projet photographique, que c'est quelque chose de très, très long, c'était très long. Et quand on a commencé à travailler sur le livre, bon, comme David aussi, on travaille de la même manière. On a des planches où on fait de toutes petites impressions de photos, on fait l'editing. Et là, tout d'un coup, c'est l'idée de faire 7 chapitres, par exemple. Enfin, l'idée de le diviser en chapitres, c'est quelque chose que j'avais jamais pensé pendant que je faisais les projets, et que c'est venu à Lucas. Et donc, c'est plein de petites choses comme ça ils sont respectueuses du travail, mais qui le changent beaucoup. C'est pas que c'est difficile à accepter, c'est surtout que il faut avoir confiance dans l'autre. Et moi, heureusement, j'avais cette énorme connaissance de Lucas, je le connais plutôt bien, on va dire. Et du coup, je pouvais lui confier tout ça. Je me suis demandé comment ils font les auteurs qui travaillent avec nous à avoir autant de confiance. Par exemple, Yelena qui nous a donné son archive, genre 240 photos, il nous a dit faites ce que vous voulez. Ou même les parents de Vera Mourate, quand on a fait les petits livres Tout va bien, ils se sont vraiment complètement donnés à nous. Enfin, est-ce que ça, c'est quelque chose qui me touche toujours quand on fait un livre avec un auteur, parce que vraiment on remet en cause plein de choses. C'est super pour moi, cette genre de rapport photographe et ou même peintre et éditeur. Pour ça, il y a de la confiance.
So, well, this book of my photos. Sorry, what's the title of the book again?
Yutza.
So for this book of my photography, I worked with Luca, who's my co-publisher, and he's also my partner. We've been together for many years. So, of course, we are used to working together. And the book was actually the outcome of a 7-year-long project where I'd been taking photos. And so we worked a bit like what we saw with David, where we had all the layout on a table and we did all the editing work like that. And it was really interesting because Luca came up with the idea of breaking down the book into 7 chapters, which had never occurred to me. I'd never thought about in terms of chapters. Again, it's not that it's difficult to accept the input of the other. It's really that you have to deeply trust each other. And of course, because I know Luca so well, I can really trust him with my work. But it really got me thinking about how the artists we work with trust us with their work. For example, Irena, she just handed out 240 photographs to us and just let us work with them. And I find it amazing. Same thing with this book by Vera Mourate called Tout va bien. And I find it really moving to see how the artists actually trust us with their production. It really is a challenge for them to do that, and I really appreciate it. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Et Marc Pearson, ça vous est arrivé d'avoir des désaccords, vous, et d'avoir des moments de crispation que vous avez réussi à surmonter dans vos publications?
How about you, Mark? Did you ever have any moments of disagreement with any artists or moments of tension that you had to overcome in your work with them?
Yes, but I think there was never anything which was not possible to resolve. And I think on the one hand, the artist has made the photographs, and so I think there's a great respect for the artist's creation, and they know their work best. And so in some way, that ultimately the artist has the final word. On the other hand, I mean, if it were totally impossible, then the project could just freeze, but that's never happened. Of course, there are some artists which are very difficult to work with, and I think it's part of the nature of being an artist to be selfish and single-minded and stubborn. So we have to deal with these qualities or characteristics, but it might mean that we may not do another project if we found this too difficult, because we want to look after all our family of artists, and if it's possible if one person is too demanding, it's impairing or affecting the others. But generally, I think we're able to reach a mutual agreement. But we were reflecting on this question beforehand, and I think we came to a broad generalization, which is that the older and the more experienced the artist, the more understanding and the more cooperative they tend to be, because they also trust. The designer has designed many books. The printer has made many books, and we have managed many books. So between our, it's not just me, but we have a small team. We have become quite experienced in making the books over these few years since we began. So I think the very experienced artists have learnt to be somewhat more open to suggestions and ideas, and sometimes people have not yet reached that ability to trust the interaction of publisher and photographer.
Oui, cette confiance qui est essentielle. Anastasia, j'imagine que pour éviter les désagréments que vous avez peut-être rencontrés aussi, est-ce que c'est pas dès le départ qu'il faut poser les conditions et surtout bien choisir les artistes avec qui on travaille?
Yeah, so this notion of trust is essential. Anastasia, to avoid any potential conflicts and disagreements, do you agree that, do you think that it's important to set out the conditions from the beginning of the work and to kind of start addressing this at the beginning of a collaboration?
Yeah, that would be nice, but you never know where the conflicts appears. I mean, we do have conflicts and disagreements all the time with artists and with designers, but I think it's just part of the process also. I do agree what my colleagues said about the trust, and I think it's really essential. And when you create, when you have this credit of trust, you can really create the space of feeling safe and creative to work with the artist. So you can really create something beautiful when you trust each other. But usually we have some disagreements when artists approach you as a publisher. They usually have this idea of the book which perfectly suits for their project. So the size and paper or binding, some other thing. But when you don't self-publish, then you work with a publisher, you automatically enter the market. And market has its own rules. And we as a publishers, we have to follow it because at some point we have to also to present it to the audience and sell it. So I think here we usually have some disagreements because our artists have some picture in the head and some expectations of how a book will be as a physical object, as a material, also how it will be presented, but when you work with an institution, it's institution that don't work only with your books, but this is some kind of program, and it all should be work together. I do remember one case when we was working on the photo book, and photography was, for me as not a photographer, it was quite complicated to understand without the context. Our author, he doesn't want any text, even the short abstract on the text at the book. And we had a huge fight, and I think it's really common with the photographers. They want to separate image and text and to let photographs speak for itself. But I think for this very conceptual photography, it was really hard also for me to present it. And we were in the printing house, and printer, he was on my side, and we had this conversation for a whole night that we have to put some text, and he was very he didn't want to do that, but at the end we didn't put any text because I usually on the side of the artist. I really want to make them happy, but now I think maybe we should be sometimes more selfish and just find a compromise.
Oui, il faut trouver l'équilibre, le compromis, comme vous dites. On va passer un peu à la dernière partie qui présente un livre singulier, un livre dont vous êtes particulièrement fier dans votre travail d'éditeur. Un livre qui vraiment montre que la relation éditeur-artiste a été de grande qualité. Anastasia, il y a un livre dont vous voulez parler en particulier, je crois celui-là.
So for the last part of our talk, we're going to talk about the special book, a special book that you made. Which book did you make that you were the proudest? A book that was really the product of a great relationship between you and the artist you worked with. Would you like to give us an example of that?
That's actually a very tricky question because it's choose from your children, but I'm going to talk about this book because they have an image. So this is one of the latest book we published also we released it 3 months ago, and the title is The Cheap Ukrainian Knife Mosaics from 50s to 90s. And I think this is a very good example how we built the process, because so the book is about knife and mortar mosaics all around the world. The photographer Yevgeny Nikiforov, he came to us with a huge archive because he'd been documenting these mosaics for almost 14 years. And so he had this huge archive with naive mosaics made by non-artists, but which is still a huge part of our culture, and we wanted to show it. And I think it's also about the trust, because he just gave us this huge archive, and we were in the process from the very beginning to select the pictures and then make a sequences, and we invited writers to write a text, and I'm really happy with the result. But I also we really wanted to build the team and find the financial support to everybody, because in our situation it was also important as a publisher to be able to pay properly to everybody. So we wrote a grant, and we received like a huge grant to make this book. And I think from the very beginning, how it was created, and for the final results, I think it was one of the most fascinating and interesting projects we had so far.
Marc Pearson, vous aussi, il y a des livres dont vous vous souvenez particulièrement, où vous avez l'impression que vous avez pu aller vraiment très loin dans cet échange avec l'artiste. Je pense peut-être au livre que vous avez fait avec Tokyo Rumando.
How about you, Mark? Do you have any examples of especially memorable books in terms of your collaboration with the artist? I'm thinking of a book, Tokyo Rumando.
Yes, that is those are memorable books. This book was the first. This was the first book that we made with Tokyo Rumando, and it is quite special in my memory. I first encountered this when I returned to a photograph gallery in Shinjuku, where I had been part of a collaborative or cooperative gallery, like a kind of night school for. Not exactly school, but night gathering for photographers to show your work and share photography. And that led me into the world of Japanese photography in Tokyo. After I'd established my gallery in 2009, maybe it was a couple of years later, I went back to that gallery in Shinjuku and I saw her work on the wall. And I was immediately taken with this rather unusual subject, which is self-portraits taken alone in the love hotels in Tokyo. And so I got in touch with her, and we eventually produced the book together. This is an example of collaboration. Of course, it's her photographs, but when we were thinking about the cover, we couldn't really decide on the cover. We talked about it for quite a long time, and after that discussion, she went away and took a photograph for the cover, and I think we all felt it was quite an interesting choice for the cover. Yes, that is a very special memory for me. And then the next book she made, we published again in a very small format. We used to generally publish books in small format. And then she published this book soon after, which is again self-portraits of herself looking into a mirror and taking on various characters. And this book I brought to Paris in, I can't remember exactly when, but probably 2013 or something. And then, Simon Baker from the Tate came round and he picked it up. And next year she was showing in the Tate. So, this book led to this book, which led to her appearing in the Tate Modern, as part of the group show for on the theme of performance. Yeah, that definitely has a very some very strong and very good memories for me.
Francesca Taudet, l'an dernier, vous avez présenté à Arles un livre réalisé avec une très jeune artiste, Vera Muraté. Elle a 10 ans seulement, enfin elle avait 10 ans en tout cas quand vous avez présenté son livre. C'est peut-être un livre justement dont vous voulez nous parler, une collaboration intéressante.
Last year you presented a book by a very young artist who was 10 years old at the time. Last year you presented it in Arles. The artist is called Vera Muraté. Can you tell us about this collaboration?
Oui, alors en fait, la rencontre avec cet auteur, cette autrice, c'est représenté dans cette image. Enfin, cette image, c'est le moment où on l'a rencontré. Et c'était pas prévu. On était à Polycopie. D'ailleurs, je pense que David se souvient du moment aussi. On était à Polycopie et il y avait cette petite fille qui était en train de dessiner, assise par terre avec ses photocopies et dont elle prenait les modèles pour faire les dessins. Et je me suis approchée un peu. Enfin, je regardais qu'est-ce qu'elle dessinait et les dessins étaient très beaux. Je me suis dit, bon, ça pourrait être intéressant de faire un livre de photocopies et dessins, parce que nous, on vient du monde des zines, des fanzines. Du coup, c'est en fait l'aspect un peu rude, raw, ça nous intéresse, des photocopies. Bon, alors il y avait Luca aussi, je lui ai dit, mais qu'est-ce qu'on fait, on lui propose ou pas? Et après, on ne voulait pas ressembler à des gens qui volent les enfants, alors on a juste demandé à Vera s'il voulait passer à la table avec ses parents, et ils sont arrivés dans une demi-heure, et en fait après on a découvert que son père, le père de Vera Mouraté, du coup il est Mir Mouraté, dont on savait pas qu'il était son père, et qui est un grand photographe. Moi je pense que aussi il est un des photographes français meilleurs de ce moment et qu'il n'est pas assez reconnu, et on aimerait bien faire un livre avec lui au futur. Mais bon, pour l'instant on lui a demandé de donc nous donner des images pour avoir un contexte à pourquoi Vera Mouraté fait des dessins d'animaux aussi beaux. Enfin, c'est évident qu'elle a grandi dans une maison d'artistes, bah, du coup elle était toujours en contact, mais oui, et comme ça Mir il nous a donné des images de la vie de Vera, et on a pu découvrir qu'en fait elle côtoie les animaux même si elle habite dans le centre de la ville, et il y a des oiseaux qui tombent de nuit et ils viennent chez eux, enfin, ou sinon des courbeaux qui passent chez eux et qui restent toute l'année. Et ouais, ça c'était une rencontre plutôt magique, enfin, on va dire.
Yeah, this encounter with Vera was very unusual. The last image we saw was the moment when we actually met her, which was an unplanned encounter. It was at Polycopie, is an art fair.
C'est a book fair.
A book fair. So we were at the Polycopie book fair, and we saw this little girl sitting on the floor who was drawing. She was using photocopies as models to draw. So we approached her and looked at her drawings, and they were really beautiful. And immediately we thought we could make a book with photocopies and drawings, because we both come from the fanzine scene, and so we've always been interested in these kinds of images. So me and Luca went to approach her, and we were a bit worried they would think we wanted to kidnap her. So we asked her parents to come and see us at our stand. And her parents came, and we found out that her dad was quite an important French photographer called Mir Mouraté. Mir? Mouraté, pardon, excusez-moi. We discovered that her dad was a photographer, and that this girl had grown up in a house where she was surrounded with artists and with art. But then, speaking to Mir, we also found that she had grown up surrounded by animals. Although they lived in a city, there were squirrels and little birds fallen from their nests, and she was, and that was what inspired her to make these beautiful drawings.
David Fourré, est-ce qu'il y a un échange dont vous vous rappelez particulièrement, une anecdote que vous voulez nous raconter justement sur la relation éditeur-photographe dont vous ne nous avez pas encore parlé? Là, j'ai mis en photo le dernier livre de Bernard Plossu.
David, can you think of an anecdote, a memory you would like to share about a special collaboration you might have had with an artist? This is an image from Bernard Plossu.
Il y a un livre de Céline Croce qui a eu le prix Nada, qui s'appelle Siempre que, et Céline est venue passer plusieurs moments à la maison. On a travaillé très vite sur ce bouquin. C'était un bouquin qui a été fait très rapidement. Et puis après, on a commencé à réfléchir à la couverture, à la typo, à des choses comme ça. Et là, ça a été très très dur de se comprendre, dans des moments qui étaient un petit peu tendus. Mais ça, c'est juste un exemple de comment aussi un éditeur peut gagner vraiment quand il est poussé dans ses retranchements, à pas refaire toujours la même chose, parce que des fois, c'est vrai qu'on a tendance à répéter certaines choses. Donc voilà, et puis après il y a d'autres auteurs qui, pour le cas de Soledades par exemple, qui est un livre qu'on vient de sortir avec Gilles Roudière. Donc Gilles est venu 3 fois à la maison. Il y a toujours une première séance qui se fait où on pose quelque chose. Voilà, on commence à poser quelque chose, à comprendre quelque chose. Et puis chacun repart de son côté. Et là on se dit bon, il y a des trucs à refaire. Et donc il revient une deuxième fois, et là on est content, on a compris le sens du livre, on a fait nos 5 petites parties, et puis le photographe repart. Et une troisième partie, parce que le photographe a une nouvelle idée. Et comme ça pourrait être infini. Ça se passe toujours bien. Au final, on arrive toujours à faire le livre qu'on avait voulu. Et voilà, ça prend toujours des chemins différents, ça prend toujours des fois des moments plus longs. Et c'est vrai que le fait d'être prêt à remettre en cause, même si c'est pas toujours confortable, c'est comme il faut toujours accepter ça. Tant que le livre n'est pas imprimé.
L'artiste vous apporte, je dis juste ça, un défi d'une certaine façon, vous met au défi quoi aussi.
Ouais, plus ou moins tous les deux. Enfin, je veux dire, tout à l'heure, on parlait du fait que des fois, le photographe a des idées dans la tête aussi de certaines formes de livres, et qu'à un moment, l'éditeur va devoir se coltiner une certaine fabrication avec des risques financiers, mais des risques techniques aussi. On peut très vite abîmer un livre. Donc voilà, c'est de la discussion permanente, c'est accepter d'imaginer quelque chose d'autre que ce qu'on avait en tête à la base.
Yeah, one book I had in mind was this book we made with the artist Céline Rose, which won the Nadar Awards, and it's a book called Sempre Que. And it's a book that was very quick to make. It came together really, really quickly, and then the rest of the book, making the cover, the design, the typography, was incredibly hard, and so that's when the tensions arose. So that's an example that shows that as a publisher, you always need to question the way you work and not just rely on the fact that you're going to be doing the same thing again and again forever. Another example is a book called Soledades by an artist called Gilles Rodière. That's more recent. To make the book, Gilles came to visit me 3 times, actually. We had 3 sessions together. And it usually works like that. Like you have a first session where you start kind of setting the grounds for the project and figuring out how it might work. Then the artist goes home and comes back. And during your second session, that's where it really takes shape and you start to really understand what the book's about and how it's going to function, and everyone's happy. And then the artist leaves. And then the third time they come back and they have an entirely new idea and they came up with lots of new stuff, and you have to go back to work, and it could just go on and never finish. But so far things have always really turned up quite well, and although it can follow different paths and it can take more or less time, but what's important is to just keep challenging yourself in your methods of work and in how you work. And of course, as we said earlier, the photographers always have an idea of how they would want the book to be, and but of course you're the one responsible for the production of the book, the fabrication, and the financial risk and the technical risk that goes along with that. So it's really a question of discussing all that and talking it through with the artist, and again trusting each other.
Merci à tous. Merci pour cette table ronde de nos invités. David Fourré des éditions La Main Donne, Marc Pearson de Zen Photogalerie à Tokyo, Anastasia Leonova de Is Publishing et puis Francesca Taudet de la maison d'édition Départ pour l'image. Merci beaucoup. Merci à tous. Merci à Salombo Goudal et Enora Pluma qui ont préparé avec moi cette table ronde, et plus globalement à France Photobook qui a permis cette belle rencontre, et aussi aux rencontres d'Arles et à l'École nationale supérieure de la photographie. Bonne fin de journée à tous.